Hello, today is Friday, April 9th, 2021. My name is Alexis Nino and I'm interviewing Miss Paula Garay for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please note, Mrs. Garay, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question.
Okay.
Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
I agree.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
I agree.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to UTRGV University Special Collections and Archives, we would have stripped out any contact information from yourself or family members so that it will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes, I agree.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you say in the interview questions that I will now ask. Okay, so Ms. Garay, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us here at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and the Voces Project. Particularly for us at UTRGV Special Collections, we are committed to preserving the stories of Mexican Americans and Latinos from South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, and those who work closely with these populations during this COVID-19 pandemic. Since you are a middle school teacher who truly cares for the physical and mental well-being of your students in the city of Brownsville, Texas, and because you are a mother, sister, aunt, and friend who is knowledgeable of how COVID has impacted your inner bubble of people, I am thrilled and excited to hear the meaningful and fascinating stories on how COVID-19 has impacted every aspect that goes on in your daily life. So before I ask you to share any stories about your life in this pandemic, can you tell us who Miss Paula Garay is?
Well, my name is Paula Garay. I was born and raised here in Brownsville, Texas. I attended our local school district, which is Brownsville ISD. From there, I went to what was formerly known as the University of Texas at Brownsville. graduated with my bachelor's degree in liberal arts and have been teaching for the past 20 years at the VISD, where I spent 10 years at the elementary level, and then my other 10 years have been at the middle school level.
Okay. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19? How did you learn about it? Did you hear it from the radio, from TV, from social media?
The first time I heard about COVID had to be somewhere around January. And I had heard a little bit about it in the news, but never thought that it was something big, something that was going to impact us so much. We would hear kids at school talking about it, the coronavirus. They weren't sure what it was. We all just thought it was like some kind of like maybe like a flu or something. So it wasn't something that we expected to have such an impact, such a change in our lives. So it was back in around January when I heard about it.
What was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Well, at first, like I said, it wasn't something that was taken very serious because I don't think the world itself actually knew what, the coronavirus was at that time. It was just what we were hearing from overseas of what was happening, but it hadn't affected, our country. So at first it wasn't taken very seriously. It wasn't around March where we felt the impact, and that was because that hit us right during spring break. So it kind of affected our whole way of teaching from that moment on.
At one point, did you realize this pandemic was serious, was a serious life-altering event, or did you not think that it was this serious?
At first, I didn't believe it was going to be that serious. But like I said, once we hit spring break and our kids go out, on vacations for a week, we expected to come back with our usual schedule, come back to school on a Monday. And then when they said it's going to be extended for a week, and that week goes by, and then it's being extended again to where the point, 2-3 weeks later, it's like, okay, nobody's going back. And now you can't go anywhere unless you're wearing a mask. That's when you pretty much notice, okay, they're stopping, life as it is, normality. Then that's where you kind of feel like, okay, this has to be something very serious.
Over the last few months, what news media, social media, or other sources do you rely on to keep you informed about coronavirus?
I mostly watch TV. I'll watch like Fox News, NBC. They'll keep us more up to date with what's going on. Facebook does give us some information because we do have those news feeds where they, we stay up to date, current with what's going on. But I rely mostly on the news, see what's going on and how it's being affected in the world, because then that's how you know, okay, what's the next wave going to be like.
Can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and any of its variants? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about this new coronavirus?
What I do understand about the coronavirus is that it's a disease, which is like an unknown. You can't see it. You can, really know that it's out there until you feel the effects. It attacks your respiratory system. And that's where you start seeing, the effects of maybe having a cold or something like that. But then it goes into more of a deeper where it attacks your lungs, and it just completely changes the way you breathe.
Can you tell me what you know about the various vaccines available to the public? How do you feel about these vaccines?
The vaccines, I know the first one that was approved by the US was the Pfizer one. And what I've seen in the news, what I've been able to research on it, it's been very effective, not only under trials, but now that it's become available, with everybody that has tested, it's given very good results. Hopefully moving forward, now they're testing on young kids, so that hopefully that will help with the population. I know there's other vaccines available, like the Johnson & Johnson, which is just one dose, but it has the percentage for effectiveness is a little bit lower. So I feel that, maybe it's something people go for because they just go for the one dose and that's it. But we have to think on the long run, what's going to protect our system, what's going to make us stronger. So I believe having being vaccinated is a good thing because not only are you protecting yourself, but you're protecting the people around you too. Because if you are safe, then that always keeps the other people safe. But of course, you still have to continue using your mask and everything because, like I said, it's a virus that we can see. We can only feel it once the effects are within us.
Do you have a vaccination story you would like to share with me now or perhaps later in this interview?
Uh, Going in when I got my first dose, I was a little bit scared because you hear stories of how, you know, you go from the minimal to the max to where, the minimal is like, oh, you're going to have a sore arm, so it's going to hurt a little bit. But then you hear the stories where people get sick, they have chills, they get fevers. So you kind of get scared of like, well, what will be my reaction? Will it be something minimal that I'm going to recover? Or is it something that's going to feel like maybe I shouldn't have done it? But then once you get the vaccine, it's not, and several family members have gotten it. So you get to see the different, outcomes from everybody. And I have to say that it's worth it to go get the vaccine.
Okay. And do your family members hold the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some who take it more seriously or lightly?
Uh, in general, my family takes it serious. The point that I can prove is that my whole family, my mom, uh, who's still alive, and my siblings, I have four sisters and three sisters, sorry, and one brother. We've all been vaccinated. Our spouses have been vaccinated. Our children that are 16 and older have been vaccinated. And so we're just waiting on the younger ones. So that pretty much shows how strong we believe that this is something that's going to help us go back to our normal life, hopefully soon.
Okay, so for these next set of questions, I'd like to talk about how you've seen COVID-19 affect your family members, your colleagues, as well as your students who you have virtually taught over the past year. Since you teach in a community where many kids live in poverty and have trouble to internet access, I would like to know your response to these issues being faced, as well as how you keep your students engaged, just like if you were in an actual classroom setting. Okay, so Ms. Garay, let's talk about your family aspect in this topic. You mentioned in our pre-interview that you have four older siblings. How are all of them holding up during this pandemic? Have they had any trouble with their jobs during COVID? And can you share with me some experiences?
Well, during this pandemic, I have three sisters, one brother. Uh, my oldest sister, she's a nurse, so she's obviously been more impacted by COVID because she's having to deal with it at a closer range. She does work for a school district, so she does have a lot of like movement around her, not only with the kids that are going face to face, but also with the adults that are on campus. My other two sisters are both educators. So they've been affected the same way that I have to, where, our job description has changed. We're no longer face to face where we can just walk around, check on the kids, check their progress, stop, let's see what you're doing. Now it's more like, okay, how can we make a connection with them? So I've seen the impact that they've had, especially because we all teach at different grade levels. And then my brother, he is an accountant, so he's also seeing the change, the effect, because before he used to have clients coming into his office and that close contact. Okay, let's get together, let's look at the books, let's look at the numbers. Now everything has to be set by appointments with a distance, so it's had a pretty big effect on all of us.
Okay, so it seems like you answered two of the upcoming questions that I had for you. So like you mentioned right now, your second oldest sister lives in Austin, as I recall from the pre-interview, who you also said is a teacher just like yourself. How is she holding up in regards to the pandemic?
I know for her situation is a little bit different because I teach at the middle school level. But my sister in Austin, like I mentioned, she in the pre-interview, she teaches kinder. So it's a lot harder in her situation, I feel, because they're at that age where they're little sponges. So they're learning everything that they see, but they learn not just by seeing, but also by, touching. And it's hard when you're not able to have them in class and they don't have the attention span to be sitting in front of a computer, let's say from 8 to 3. That's very hard for them. You have kids that, I know she's mentioned, they get frustrated, they get tired, they'll want to log off, turn off the camera, because they're just tired or they don't understand. So I know she's been affected greatly because her kids are not in an age where they understand what's going on. And she tries to explain it, but they don't get exactly what's going on. They don't, in their head, it's like they hear the word COVID or coronavirus, but it doesn't click, what exactly is it? So she's been affected, that she doesn't have that contact with her kids.
Okay, and how has her school district handled instruction during the pandemic?
During the pandemic in her school district, I know it's very similar to ours. She mentions, when the school year started, it started off, virtually. Everybody was at home. As time has gone by, they try to bring in some of the kids voluntarily, up to the parents if they want to bring them back for that face-to-face. So they're working both virtually and face-to-face. So they're having to work both sides to see, where they can teach everybody, but at the same time, keep everybody safe.
Okay. Has your sister ever faced some struggles or obstacles with virtual and remote learning?
Her struggles, I from what I talk from her, are similar, but at the same time different. Similar because, there's loss of internet, not everybody has access to it. Of course, sometimes devices go down, hotspots don't always work. But I think what makes it even harder for hers is that her kids don't know how to connect. There has to be someone at home, that's helping them log in. When you're telling them, what buttons to press and stuff like that, sometimes they don't get it because, like I said, they're at an age where this is a school year where they're barely learning their letters and then their sounds, and they're making those sounds connect so they can make words. So it's when they're barely learning for them to be able to know, oh, you just click here, you press this and connect. That makes it harder. So I know that's what she struggles with.
Okay, and like you said earlier, you told me that your brother is an accountant. How has COVID impacted his job? If you can share with me some experiences where he has maintained certain safety precautions in his office setting.
Well, before, for his job as an accountant, he used to have, not only himself, but he had his employees around him. He had people coming in and out of his office. He had a waiting section and all that stuff. Now everything is by appointment. There can only be a certain amount of people in his office. He's had to kind of rotate his schedule, or he doesn't have all his employees in at the same time to kind of, have that social distance. But I think the major impact are with his clients, that now everything has to be by appointment. Before, they had the liberty of like, okay, when you have time, come by the office, we'll look at the books, we'll look at numbers, we'll set up, we'll get something going, stuff like that. And now it's kind of like, well, we have to do it at this time, and it's not always convenient because, maybe they have other things to do at their businesses, but then he has also other clients that he needs to see. So he has to, juggle those schedules so that it'll fit everybody's needs. And that means working late hours sometimes.
Okay. And like you also mentioned, your oldest sister is a registered nurse that you also mentioned to me in the pre-interview as well. I realize being a healthcare provider is very stressful and can be overwhelming, especially with this pandemic. How is she holding up in regards to COVID, Does she do any certain sanitation protocols when she arrives home to keep her family safe from potentially bringing the virus home?
My sister being a nurse, I think she's more conscious of, of the virus. So therefore, I know that she takes like every necessary precautions to keep herself and her family safe. Um, I know that one of the things that she has been dealt with is not only working at school as a nurse, but she also volunteers within the community to help distribute those vaccines. Yeah, and so I know that one of her precautions is, of course, always, washing her hands, sanitizing, spraying. Uh, but I know that one of the things that has affected is that when she gets home, it's no longer, get home, relax, see the kids, talk to the kids, have that interaction. Now it's more, okay, let me make my way into my bedroom so I can get ready to take a shower before I have any type of interaction with her own kids. So I know that has changed a lot. And at the same time, she no longer goes and say, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna go pick up, some groceries to bring back, so we can cook some meals." Now she has to be more careful. Okay, what's the best time to go where there's less people? She looks at it because being a nurse, she's more aware. So she, looks at every single little detail just to keep herself, but mainly her family safe.
Okay, and you mentioned that your mother is still alive, and
Yes.
from the point of view, you told me that she lives with your sister, from what I recall. She is elderly and therefore needs to be watched over carefully since she is more prone to this virus. How has she been doing during this entire pandemic? Are there any activities or hobbies that she does to occupy herself at home?
Well, at first it was a little bit of a struggle for my sister because just like kids, when you get at a certain age, it's also hard to understand something that they've never lived through in their whole life. So she's 77 years old. So now, for all of a sudden to tell her, okay, you can go here, don't have contact, don't, when you see people, don't shake their hands no more. You have to wear a face mask. That was something that was very big because she didn't understand why they had to wear that face mask. And even though, my sister would tell her, it didn't quite click. It took a while for it to click that, okay, this is something serious. I think it didn't, she didn't make the connection until some of us started losing some of our friends to COVID, and she knew some of these people. So that's when it kind of clicked like, okay, this is something very serious. So now it's a point to where, okay, they don't go out to eat anymore. Everything is, home cooked meals. Before, she's more of a stay at home person, but she would enjoy going on, like, for example, Saturdays, to have dinner. And now it's like there's no more going out to restaurants. I know that not even groceries. That was her hobby back then. She no longer works. She's retired. So going to buy groceries, which most people hate doing because it's always packed, to her that was her, going out, getting out of the house. So that's been hard for her now. But she's found other hobbies. She loves to read. So my sister that's there with her, tries to get her books to read. She loves novels, so she'll read those novels. Puzzles, that's something that's really entertained her a lot. So, those are just newfound hobbies that, at least now she can enjoy something else.
Okay, so Ms. Garay, these next set of questions focus on your stories and experiences as an educator in the time of COVID-19. Okay, so to get some background knowledge, how long have you been employed with Brownsville ISD?
I've been employed with the school district for 20 years.
And how did you end up in Brownsville ISD?
Well, I was born and raised here in Brownsville, so I attended public school, Brownsville Independent School District. So my whole life, I've always seen the system, the teachers, the way they work. So when I graduated high school and went into college, that was kind of like the first thing that I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to see what was it going to be like the teaching field. So I took classes and then drew observations. And then when I did my student teaching, that's when it really clicked that this is what, you know, I really wanted to do. So I was happy with the career path that I had chosen. So once I did my student teaching, I was very lucky enough that the principal at that campus had observed me several times, you know, when she would go in and do with her walkthroughs to see her own teacher. Most of the time she would see me teaching because that's what we do in student teaching, and she liked what she saw. And I was fortunate enough that in the coming school year there was going to be some positions open, so she offered me the interview. So I went through the process and I was lucky enough to be hired and end up in the school where I did my student teaching.
Okay, and how did you feel about teaching in a community where it is Latino descent? Were you prepared with any challenges that you might have faced?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
How did you feel about teaching in a community where it is Latino descent? Were you prepared with any challenges that you might have faced?
To me, that is the norm. That's, you know, that's just normal for me. Being born and raised here in Brownsville, that's what I'm used to. That's what you know, the people that I have around me. My parents are Latinos, I'm Latina, you know, the people that I went to. So for me to work in a district where it's mostly Latino, that's just normal to me. That's not something that's out of the norms for me.
Okay, and what do you teach? Are there any activities or specific works that you enjoy teaching your students?
I teach, currently I'm teaching 7th grade English. So it's a subject I really enjoy because you're teaching them about grammar, but not just grammar. I think what is very different for these kids that I really enjoy is teaching them how to be a writer. Not just, you know, write a little story, but instead, you know, coming up with these compositions where they're actually giving information, where they're explaining, they're giving voice to, you know, to their writings, and learning how to write, not just telling something, but using different things like figurative language and stuff like that, you know, to give it more meaning and more interest, keep it more interested for themselves.
Okay, and how do you manage to ensure your students are still succeeding virtually and keeping them engaged? Are there any softwares or favorite websites that you enjoy to use to help motivate and engage your students?
When I'm with my kids, you know, not only are we on Google Classroom, but we also interact, like for example, in the Remind app, we keep in touch, not just with them, but with parents. So like with their writing compositions, when they work on Google Classroom, we're able to see it as they're typing. It's like having a live version of their paper. They're typing and we're seeing every single letter they're typing. At the same time, we teach them how to use their interactive journals so that they can create, you know, an outline, brainstorming. And a lot of times they'll send us through Remind. They'll take a picture, they'll send it to us, they'll upload it. We also use other platforms, like we like to use Palette. Palette is a website where you can pretty much, it's like a blackboard where you can create a topic, and it's like they brainstorm. So the kids are putting in their ideas, but at the same time they get to see everybody else's ideas, so they're kind of like sharing their own thoughts. We use like Kahoot, which is a program used to kind of like a type of like of a quiz, where you make it interactive, you make it more fun. Instead of just asking them the question and having them respond, it's like a, you know, it's like a little game that, you know, you give them the questions and they're trying to figure it out, and it gives them points. So it kind of puts them against each other, and they're seeing how everybody's moving up. So of course they want to move up too. So there's a lot of platforms. We use Quizlet, which gives them a little quiz on the skills that we've taught. So there's a lot of platforms there. One of the things that they love is Flipgrid, because not only do they write their composition, but then they get to read their own compositions and they record themselves reading. So they get a kick out of not only seeing themselves, but hearing themselves, because a lot of them are like, man, my voice sounds so different. And so that's something where they get to express themselves. And then, you know, some of them like to share their videos, some of them like to keep it private. So they always have that liberty, you know, we don't force them to, okay, everybody has to see your videos, you know. And so we give them feedback.
Okay. Are there any accommodations that you have had to make in order to keep educating your students in ways that will help keep them learning?
We always have to accommodate every kid has individual needs. So we constantly have to be changing up. We can like say, okay, oh, this worked this week. Okay, it's gonna continue working next week. And then we can't expect that it's gonna work all the time because the kids will get bored. So we have to find different ways of connecting with each one. Sometimes that means that we have to, when we end the class, we might have to end it and then keep some other kids so that way they can have that more one-to-one help rather than having a big group of class of, let's say, 20, 25 online. You kind of dismiss, you give the assignment, you go through the whole guided practice. So now you give them their independent practice. And while they go off and do their independent, then you can keep the small group and then you can, okay, let's go ahead and review, maybe we need to reteach it again, explain it in a different way, use visuals with them where they can understand. So those are just some of the things that we have to do to accommodate the kids.
And do you miss working in your typical classroom setting? And if you do, what do you miss the most from in-class instruction and why?
Do I miss it? 100%. It's very different. Uh, in the sense that that connection, you do make a connection with them virtually, but it's not the same as when you have them there. Sometimes when you're in a campus like at the campus I'm at, it's an economically disadvantaged campus. So a lot of our kids have not had the opportunity to travel or even to just say, oh, I went and ate at a restaurant. They might get fast food once in a while, but they don't have the luxury of saying, oh, my parents took us to a restaurant. They don't have that experience. So when you talk to them in person, or you're hearing them, sometimes they just like being heard by someone other than their family because they don't feel judged. They come up to you. And so just not having that connection where they feel like, okay, this is my teacher, but this is my teacher that actually like cares because they're listening to me. That's what makes it a little bit harder. So that's the one thing that, I wish we could all be back to the way it was.
After working from home for a while, have you found it more enjoyable than actually showing up to work in person? Why or why not?
Personally, I enjoy being more at school. When the school year started, I was teaching from home, and you have to get used to it. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, you're done and you're in your home, and you can, people can get distracted very easily or lose track of time, or you don't have access to all your resources the way you would do at school. You need something, it's not located in your room. Okay, let me run over really quick to the dean's office. Let me go to the front office. Let me go ask for this or stuff like that. So when I went back to school, we still continue virtually, but we had the option that if we wanted to teach from our campus, from our classroom, we could. So I took that opportunity, went back to campus, and it made it a lot easier, even though I didn't have the kids face to face, but I felt more at ease because everything was around me, like all my supplies, all my resource. It was something that just came up all of a sudden. It wasn't like, okay, guys, well, let me see, I'm going to try to go to school and get this. No, now I'm at school and I can just get it and show the kids right away.
Okay. Have you ever felt mental stress or anxiety from transitioning from in-person class to virtual/remote learning? If you have any experiences, do you mind sharing them?
Anxiety, maybe at first you feel a little bit nervous because you don't know, like, okay, are these kids going to keep their covers, their mask up? That was one of the concerns when the kids started coming back. And it's, like I said, it's voluntary. So it's only a few that were coming back. Each class only had maybe at the most 5 kids. So at first it was like, how many kids are coming? Are more kids going to show up? Are they going to keep their masks? Or are they going to follow social distance? Because these kids are so used to that the bell would ring and they walk in groups, or they stop and they're congregating, just in the hallway. And actually, they've been pretty good. They keep their mask on. They move from one class to the other. They don't interact that much in the hallway. They know. Now I think everybody knows how severe COVID can be. So that anxiety has gone away. So in that sense, it feels, back to normal, but at the same time different because, okay, I still have my face-to-face kids, but I also have my other kids online. So it's kind of like I have to keep an eye on both sets of kids that I have.
Okay, how concerned are you about how effective virtual learning has been for your students?
It does concern me in the sense that sometimes you have to ask yourself, okay, is this work coming directly from them? Especially in the subject that I teach, writing. There's a, we teach them, okay, the format, how many paragraphs are you going to include on this particular writing? What kind of ideas are you going to be using? How are you going to make that connection? So sometimes when you see their writings, you can see them and you're seeing their thoughts, but at the same time, you're wondering, is this all 100% original? Is there someone that's helping them? Because the kids will tend to, like turn off the camera, and we have to remind them, leave your camera on. Or, we can see them kind of like talking. So are they working on it on their own, or is somebody also giving them feedback? So that's what makes it hard, because we want to make sure that the kids are learning and that what they're showcasing is their true work. So not because we want to say, oh, this is the best writing, because if it's not, then we want to be able to say, okay, let me help you make it your best writing.
Have you ever had any issues with students in instances where they might not have internet access or a reliable device? And like I said earlier, as teaching students from a place where poverty is at a high rate, as well as living in very spacious and rural areas, I am sure you've had some struggles with some students. Could you share some experiences that you may have encountered?
We've encountered several issues with our kids. I mean, like I said, we're economically disadvantaged in that area where our school's located. So um, I would say about 85% of our kids to begin with didn't have an electronic device for them to log in. So that's where the school had to step up and, and say, okay, our kids, we knew this going into the school year. So they had to plan and say, okay, we need to start ordering, our Chromebook, so that every kid, when the school year starts, will have a computer. Not only did they have to purchase those computers, but then they also have to purchase hotspots, because again, over, I would say 75% of our kids did not have internet. We've had cases where parents did have internet and then the kid stops logging in, and we have to call and see what's going on, and the parents tell us is that we didn't pay the internet, so it piled up for the next month and we weren't able to afford it, so they ended up cutting the internet. So it's hard for them because they have to come for hotspots. The hotspots have also their problems. Sometimes they don't work. The computers, just like everything else, sometimes they stop working. We've had kids that have had to exchange their computer for another one, and sometimes the parents don't even have access to say, let me go to the school. So it's hard for them to say, oh, I'm going to go pick up one, because they don't have that access to come to the school.
Have you ever had to work on anything extra hard to ensure you are keeping your students engaged as if you were still in a real classroom setting?
One thing that we have to work on is always letting the kids see, not just know, but let them see that you're engaged, that you're on everything. Because if they see that you lose sight of one thing, or that you get distracted, or that you're doing other things, then you're going to lose them. You're going to lose the attention. So you constantly have to be monitoring. You constantly have to be, like checking it. And it's, for example, let's say I'm in my class, I have 20 kids, 25 kids. I have classes where I have 30 kids online, and I have to have my other computer open and all their files. So that way, when they're writing, I can just click automatically the students writing. I can see like, okay, Ms. Nino, I need you to add more. Or let's look at your introduction, right? Let's see, did you stay on topic? Did you give us the purpose? Did you give us the reason? Were you clear on what your thesis statement is telling us? So the kids have to see that you're actually looking at their work. And that's kind of hard because, like I said, you have one computer screen with 30 files open at the same time. So the kids have to see that you're on them at all times.
What policies has Brownsville ISD enforced in order to combat the disease?
One of the things that the district has done, or Brownsville has done, is making sure that we have the equipment at school, to protect ourselves and the kids that are coming face to face. They have the sanitizing machines, the foggers, where they go in and that's like a thorough, disinfecting of the school. They also have the disinfectant sprays, the wipes, the gloves, a mask in case anybody comes in and doesn't have a mask, it's right there available. They have machines that take the temperatures. Aside from that, every teacher has also in their own classroom, so we can monitor their temperatures as they rotate from one class. Okay, we take their temperature. Every class period, we take their temperature. We ask them a few questions to see if they're not feeling, showing any signs, of COVID. We have sanitizing stations in every single classroom, in hallways, in the gyms. So, they've gone above and beyond to make sure that everyone has what they need to keep safe.
Does Brownsville ISD plan to resume in-person classes during the fall?
Right now, the school district has face-to-face for all students. So it is open to 100% of the campus if they wish to return face-to-face. So if 10% wants to show up, then we'll take those few. If we have 50% of the kids wanting to show up, we'll take them. Our campus is already open. Like I said, we've had all the materials that we need. We're following social distance. It's just a matter of organizing the room so that the kids are not at a close proximity.
Okay, and do you know of any employees or colleagues of yours who have been cut short during this time or have been put on leave?
Luckily at our campus, everybody's been safe. So nobody has, been laid off or had to be moved from one campus to another because of, we lost students. So that means we have to lose personnel. So luckily, no, our school has been very lucky that we've been able to keep everybody.
Okay, so these are going to be the last final questions just to close out the interview. Are you satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Brownsville, Texas?
Yes, because our city is following the guidelines that our government, that our president is giving us. So as more vaccines, as more things are coming in, they're making it available for us. So I think they've been doing a good job.
Okay, and are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by our Governor Greg Abbott here in Texas?
I believe so. Everything is within limits. I know people get frustrated because they're still missing the vaccine, but there's guidelines. We have to protect first our elderly, and we understand that. Sometimes when we're younger, we don't see it. We want to get it right away, but we have to think of our elderly, our grandparents, our parents, right? Because they're the ones that at higher risk. But eventually everything is, it's working now. More people are now vaccinated, and there's still more vaccines to come.
Okay, and are you satisfied with the current national response to COVID-19 led by President Biden and his administration?
Yes, I would have to say yes, because like I said, now more vaccinations are available. Before they were very limited. Now they're more available to where people before were panicking. How can I sign up? Or, it's available and they go and it's like, okay, all the appointments are already taken up. Now they're more and more available to the point to where, okay, now there's leftovers, and, it has to be like announced, we still have vaccines to get more people to come in. So, the response has been good.
Okay, if you had the power to respond to COVID-19 with policies, laws, or workplace decisions, what would you do differently, if anything?
That would be hard to answer. I don't think there's anything to do differently because it's just something new. It's not like something that, it's not history repeating itself. This is something new that, you couldn't prepare yourself for. ahead of time. So it's kind of like you have to take it step by step. If something like this was to happen later on, then we know how to handle it. But when it's something new, uh, it's you kind of like live and learn.
And final question, are there any other stories or experiences you would like to share with me that I have not asked about?
No, I think that pretty much has covered like everything we've gone through the pandemic.
Okay, awesome. So that wraps up our interview for today. Thank you, Ms. Garay, for your participation in the UTRGV Voces Oral History Project. Your insight into your experiences with COVID-19 are greatly appreciated. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.